the world past and let us work with it instead of in opposition to it. So for whatever that's worth, I come from a family who had a saying that goes back at least to the old country in Hungary. Cheer up, things could be worse. Sure enough, I cheered up, things got worse. So my hope is born out of that. Let me start with a brand new poem called Morning. Morning is a dream all its own, when first light appears, when birds first sing, when a breeze begins to stir. You enter false darkness, a traveler who could never fathom the times of your life. You can only receive it anew once again, like any other morning, when in the dawning breeze you hear the birds and decide to dance the silent symphony that makes you, that turns the world without notice, stirring longings that cannot be ignored. Leaves of grass in any season, yellow or green, bend with the slightest intention. And Alan was referencing Not Quite Pilgrims. So I'm going to do 3 poems from that. The first one is February Blues. This in-between time, brown beaten down grass, dirty snow, leafless trees filled with birds waiting on light, on warmth for direction. Like us, they seek stability. They have survived, and so will we. We will overcome gray skies hovering, full of hate, drifting with hypocrisy. Look to the birds, learn their ways, scavenge as you must. Thank God for the remaining berries. Believe in dormant buds. Things will be better, and goodness is discovered in the act of discovery. Sipping hot coffee. In the backyard after rain fell all night, morning skies still heavy, dark, filled with birdsong. When I feel sun never again may shine, I consider how unbirdlike I am and ask forgiveness of all things good and resilient. This next one was composed on a road trip, and it's a little different, but it's titled The Working Poor. I pulled into a convenience store long before sunrise. The working poor. They gather before sunrise at a convenience store, a neon oasis where a cowboy-hatted man reads the morning paper. We hold these truths to be self-evident. The clerk sports a turquoise muscle shirt and camo cap. His pale red flesh matches his eyes. Gas, coffee, sodas, bad breakfast, ATM money for a bus ticket. We are all starting over, aren't we? And then I will read several from the 2020 collection, Sunlight and Cedar. And we'll start with Stars in December. Do a couple winter ones, then we'll move to a couple summer ones. And then Stars in December. They are close enough to touch. I raise my hands, fingertips glow with fire from God, their silence resounding. A law should require us all out into an empty field on a cold December night. But then what do laws do but make outlaws of the unreflective? So I will keep my vigil in private, and tomorrow in false indoor light, I will try to tell you why December stars matter. Indeed, why the stars. Geese at dawn. Only one star remains in ambient light. Venus, I guess, in sky distant without color. Bare treetops reaching up into empty sky. An unseen bird begins a few cautious notes. I hear geese in a field beyond the hill suddenly go quiet. Before long, birdsong will fill the morning. It's never too early to welcome a return, never too soon to account for things unseen. Prayer. I buried bulbs in the yard. With a shovel, I dug around the pecan tree and on my knees placed bulbs into ground. Then by hand returned the soil, patting it into place to cover the wounds I caused. I rose and for good measure tamped the dirt firm with the sole of my boot, a righteous feeling, my feet entreating timeless earth. What good we do follows the good we believe. Well, let's go to summertime. And this poem is titled Basket of Peaches, which was a poem I was commissioned to write. And you never know how those are going to turn out, but I think it turned out all right. If it didn't, just pretend it did. Basket of Peaches. An afternoon sun, golden strands glow just right under a bright red rim, blend with pink, soft purple fruit, one stacked against another, one on top, peeking above the others. The one you will touch first and hold like the hand of a child. Feel skin soften your own callous flesh. Then set it aside to inspect two or three more. Consider the paradox of firm skin covering a river of juice, anticipating a sticky stream from the corners of your mouth dripping down to your elbows. You decide on the whole basket. They belong together. For a time, everything fits. The world is an eternal garden. You set the basket on a dependable table covered with patterned cloth, adjust window shades. Evening sunbeams slip through, yellowing a basket rimmed in red, full of the sweet promise of tomorrow. Chicory in the ditches. When first light calms blue swept night and cool dawn erases yesterday's heat, morning reminds us that night is a fragment and summer swelter is brief. Blue flowers color the day in dew-filled grass. We find ourselves in song. We are made for the morning. Starting over is something we should get right. And I will conclude my part of this program with a poem titled Path of the Morning Sun. I was driving to a high school graduation for one of my relatives, and these images started bouncing along. And so that became the inspiration for the poem. Path of the Morning Sun. Morning sun glistens off backs of black cows bending to graze on green clover. Steam glowing from nostrils like halos of unsuspecting angels. Exuberant swallows dive beneath, above, around, through the bridge on Highway 3. Morning sun shadows their concrete playground. These gifts, these blissful days when a traveler remembers being 18, graduating, and all the roads looked bright, beckoned adventure. In time, All roads curve into themselves, into the center of being. But that is not your concern now. Today, you must follow every path you cross. Search every metaphor like a child chasing daisies in the field next door. Every day is a poem, and every poem reveals a world of hope, layer upon layer of truth immersed in beauty, streams in the hills, sunrise on the prairies, sandy coasts, jagged calico rocks, every green tree, every wild rose. Indeed, the spectrum of every colored flower greets your discovery, awaits the courage of recognition, the test of honesty. Any place you go, goodness has already been there. It's but yours to find it. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it. Thanks for listening.
Ken, there's no doubt there's a lot of hope there. Thanks, man. Really appreciate it. And again, folks, all these people have links to their books in the off their biographies. And a shout out to Karen Tardif, who is our webmaster. Now I have the impossible task of trying to introduce Dorothy Alexander. Dorothy is a lawyer, judge, activist. She's Alice's and mine, along with her wife, Debbie Napier's favorite adopted aunt. And I have two kids in the audience. There's great Aunt Dorothy. Say hi to her. They've never met her. But what dawned on me eventually when I was thinking, and I guess I should say this, in 2013, Dorothy was given the Carlisle Distinguished Service Award by the Oklahoma Center of the Book. She's published 5 books of poetry. But thinking about Dorothy, I started to realize that every single adjective that starts with the letter W applies to Dorothy. She's wry, witty, wise, wonderful. I began to think maybe in her garage out in Santa Fe, there's an invisible plane and a lasso of truth. I'm not sure about that. She can tell us. She's a dear friend and a great poet, and I can't wait to listen to her. So I'm going to stop talking. Everybody, here's Dorothy Alexander.
Thanks, Alan. You're always so kind and good to me. I really wish that I could be in Corpus today, but we're not. And so I do relish seeing all the familiar faces that I've seen in Corpus and Ada and Okima and San Antonio, Granbury. It's really good to see those faces again, along with the new faces, and extremely pleased to meet Alex and to hear his poetry. They're full of hope, and I love your poetry. Thank you for being here, Alex, and for me getting to meet you. I have 4 or 5 poems here today that I think I can get in the right amount of time. All of them reflect and remind me of hope, and I hope they say the same thing to you. My first poem is a rather long narrative poem, and it's patterned after one of C.D. Wright's poems. I loved C.D. Wright, the late C.D. Wright. I thought she's one of the best poets that the U.S. has ever produced. And she wrote a poem called A Farm Boy, and she published it in her book called, I always have to look at this, Like Something Flying Backwards. And the distinction distinctive feature of this poem is that I'll show it to you, it's justified on the right side of the paper rather than the left side. And I don't know why, but that seems to say something to me. I can't name it, but I like seeing it. So here's my poem that's called Hope from the Heart of a Horse. Regardless of what Emily Dickinson says, all hope doesn't come from a thing with feathers. Anyway, here's my poem about a little girl and a horse that I knew once. It's an absolutely true account. For hope from the heart of a horse. Who would have thought that sitting on a barroom stool near closing time on a chilly winter night would change my life and lives of others, both human and animal, when a broken mother offered me her broken child to rear as my own. And in a moment of weakness, or was it wisdom, I said yes to such a preposterous proposition. And who could have told that a 9-year-old girl named Rhonda, bringing all she owned in this world in 2 cardboard boxes in a grubby little backpack, would come to live with me on a farm perched on the Oklahoma prairie, owned by a California film baron, who allowed us to live there in exchange for looking after his one aging gelding named Joe and a Mexican burro named Pascual. And who could have foreseen that a not so young paint mare would join us, a mare that Rhonda called Buttons, and along with the other 2 equine members of our braided family, would live in an airplane hangar with the rich owner's Cessna, abiding together mostly in harmony. And who would have supposed that Rhonda would learn to pitch hay, measure grain, use a curry comb, and break ice on frigid mornings, where the sweet-tempered, patient horse quietly and surely became her nanny, her co-mother, her confidant, her expert caregiver, and would give the girl something I could not. And then showed me what patience and understanding looked like, and taught me the way to mother a girl child. And who would have guessed that a paint mare could become a Zen master, standing patiently while children scrambled to her back, then walking steadily and deliberately, guided only by her nose gently touching my back as I walked ahead of them. She possessed the patience of a hooved Job, and in the course of her quiet and gentle plodding, wielded the healing power of the mythic centaur, Charon, showing Rhonda how to accept and to give love. Who could have dreamed that a female equine would teach me to find faith and hope in the goodness and generosity of the universe, to be grateful for everything, even when it doesn't look good at first sight? Who could have suspected that she would stand stoically beside me at the gate the morning Rhonda left us for good to reunite with her birth father, waving goodbye through the back window of his car until she was out of sight? And who could have predicted that the broken child would grow to become a strong, loving woman, make a happy marriage, a family of her own, children, grandchildren, and build a career of caregiving others? And who could have known that the paint mare would live more than 30 years and spend her last days quietly carrying children over dusty trails in the Oklahoma Panhandle, which is where I saw her for the last time on a bright Saturday morning, much like the morning I first saw her. And though I know where her white bones lie in a field not far from our old home, I choose not to look upon them because I already know who she is. And I never, never want to hear anyone say, that was just a horse. My next poem is on a little brighter note. I was just a child, a very small child when World War II started, but it was very frightening, especially to children, because we didn't know where the hell Pearl Harbor was, or London, or New York City for that matter. But my dad did something that raised our hopes, and I want to tell you about it. It's called Riding in the Rumble Seat. Dad bought it when the war broke out and gas rationing condemned his big Lincoln Zephyr, his pride, to sit on blocks for the duration. It was a 1935 Model A Ford Roadster that we called the Hoopy, or the happy car. It was a species of its own. It's ooga ooga as seductive as any mating call ever heard. To us kids, it was heaven on wheels, an escape from the back seat of the big sedan, always under surveillance by the grown-ups, to a fresh air freedom we could not have dreamed up ourselves any better. The trunk opened out like a Christmas present to a red leather seat where we rode in the open in windy splendor, like farm dogs in the back of a pickup, our ears flapping in the breeze. My third poem is from a time that I thought was very hopeful. When I, as a country girl, escaped my parents' house, my father's authority, and went out in the world on my own. And I call this a hopeful poem, but it is possible that it is, like Alan says, the wicked stepsister delusion, but I'll let you make up your own minds. It's called Girl on the Bridge. It all comes back to me now, almost near enough to touch. The muddy red water rolling below, the Pecos River running through an August morning, the young girl standing on the narrow bridge, Route 66 traffic swooshing to and fro. She is too young to be traveling alone, hitchhiking, even in the innocence of that 1952 world. But how glad she is to be alive, hurrying blindly into the future, imagining a life of unbelievable freedom, imagining she can handle all the experience she can wring from this shining world. The sun is rising against her back. She is alive to its warmth, to the smell of automobile exhaust, the open space of the desert, mountains rising in the hazy distance, the euphoria of journey. Later, I came to judge her a foolish creature, but I was wrong. Now, when I catch a glimpse of her small, boyish body, I wave to her and try to save what remains of that bright, shining moment. My next poem is one that is full of hope, and it's for, I want to dedicate it to Debbie, my soulmate, my life partner, with whom, as I said earlier, we've lived together for 25 years. Come May. It's called Celebrating Resurrection. We looked for each other all down all the long years on all the roads we ever traveled. Then discovered we were in each other all along. We found the truth that velvet night in the sleepy village of Chimayo when we lay together on pearl white sheets, mountain moonbeams showering our naked bodies through a dusty window, while we made love under a low ceiling, our secrets guarded by the ancient adobe walls. We came for the promises held by the dirt inside the blessed sanctuario, but found our miracle long before the sun, Easter sun rose on that sacred day. Do I have time for one more, Alan? I've got one more.
Yeah, Dorothy, we got plenty.
This last one is one triggered by the current viral pandemic, and is a call for hope too. It's called Let Morning Come. Let the universe do what the universe does. Let her make the changes she deems prudent. Allow nature to work her mothering through us. Trust evolution on her inescapable path. Excuse me. Let her teach us the way to be, the way to do. Let the night come with its holy darkness, for therein lie the mysteries, the secrets which lead to knowing. Let the morning come and shine the light of knowledge upon us. Then, as the poet says, let the whole thundering world come home. And let us learn to patiently trust our heaviness. Let everything happen to us, both beauty and terror. Let us hear rumblings beneath the surface. Let poetry find us. Let music find us. Let us make images of visions from our heart. Let songs of home and hearth find us. Let us keep going, and may the wild God of hope allay our fears. Thanks everybody for being here.
Oh, thank you, Dorothy. Tom, did we get any questions in the chat room? Or I guess we can open it up if people have
Not
questions.
yet, but this would be a great time for anybody who has questions for
Or
our
comments.
panelists.
And while we're waiting for that, guys, thank you. This was wonderful. I knew it was going to be good, but it was better than I thought it was going to be. So many thanks. And thanks to all the people who came to listen.
Is Alex, is your book on the board and where you can find it, or can you tell me where we can find your book?
It's in the bios. I'm going to post the bios for everybody, but you could find a link to it in the bios.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
And it's on Amazon too, right, Alex?
Yes, yes, it is. Great reading, Dorothy.
Thank you.
And Ken too, yeah.
Alan, I have a question for Dorothy.
Go right ahead.
I was once in an antique shop and a woman came up to me and asked if I wanted a little boy. and that you said yes. I mean, could you say a little bit more about that?
Well, here's the backstory. I actually had known this woman. She was a neighbor of mine some years before that happened. And in the meantime, I had moved off to Texas to open a law practice there. And I hadn't seen her in probably 10 years. And I was in Oklahoma City working on the ERA, trying to get the ERA passed. This was back in '79. And when we finished our session at the Capitol that night, it was about midnight when we finished. I dropped by a bar to have a drink. And I walked in and there she was, the woman. And I thought I recognized her. And so I said to her, "Are you who I think you are?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, "I heard you had a baby. Is that right?" And she said, "Yes, I do. She's 9 years old now." And, I said, "Well, that's great. Congratulations." And she said, "No, it's not great. I am a really piss poor mother. She's home alone right now. I leave her alone. I'm a drunkard. And so Monday morning, that was a Friday night, she said, "Monday morning, I'm taking her to the DHS, the Department of Human Services, and I'm relinquishing custody and ask them to find her a foster home." And I said, "Oh God, no, don't do that. The system, although they mean well, a child can get lost there, especially a little girl. All kinds of things can happen. Please, please don't do that. Don't you have a family member?" And she said, "No, I don't." She said, "Why don't you take her if you're so concerned about it?" And I thought, whoa, now I've opened my mouth too wide. But I couldn't. And then she showed me a picture of the child. And I said, "Well, don't do it yet. Let me think about it. Um, I think I could manage this if it's your absolute last chance. I mean, the last thing besides putting her in the system." And she gave me her phone number. And I said, "I'll call you in the morning." And so the next morning when I woke up, I thought, "Oh, what have I done? What have I done?" Um, but I called her. I thought, "Oh, she'll have thought it over, and nothing will come of it." And so I called her and I said, "This is Dorothy and I was calling about our conversation last night." And she said, "Oh, good, good. Rhonda's packed and waiting for you."
Oh,
And I thought, "Oh God, this is it. I either get in my car and run away like a coward, or I go and I do it." So I went to her house. I drove to her house. Her little girl was sweet. She was beautiful. She was a Native American child, and she had long black hair. She was so sweet and so kind and so desperate. I could see the desperation in her eyes. I
mm.
could see it in a begging quality that said, "Take me, take me." And so I took her, and I've never regretted it. She lived with me for almost 4 years, and her birth father, her biological father, found out about her. He didn't even know he had the child. And so he wanted her, and I had to give her up. It was a hard, hard, wrenching thing to do. And I had to more or less stay out of her life after that, because the mother and father were in a thing with each other. But she turned out well, and we're friends now. And Debbie found her for me a few years ago. She was an EMT, and Debbie met her at the hospital. And she asked Debbie where she is from, and she said, "I live out in a little town in western Oklahoma that you never heard about." She said, "What town?" And Debbie told her, and she said, "Well, I used to live in that town. What are you doing there?" And Debbie said, "I live with a woman named Dorothy Alexander." And Rhonda said, "Well, so did I." But anyway, it turned out well. It was the right thing to do in taking her, and also in letting her go without fighting about it.
God.
So it's something that's taken me a lot of years to write about, because I was heartbroken for a long time. I missed her. I missed her terribly.
Thank you, Dorothy.
You're welcome. And that horse was great. That was one of the best horses I've ever seen in my life. I swear she knew what was going on. She was the best babysitter in the whole world.
I really want to thank the three of you again. It was great. Tom, if you can hear me, I think I'm
Can
off
hear you.
mute now. And
Yes.
if you want to fill people in what's coming up, that would be great as
So
well.
at 2 o'clock, we're gonna open up the Zoom link. Each Zoom link is different, so you need to go to the People's Poetry Festival website to click on the Zoom link. And we have the contributors from the Switchgrass Review Literary Journal of Health and Transformation panel, with Robin Carson being the chair, Cindy Hauser, Regina Jameson, Roxana Kazan, and Odelia Galvan Rodriguez. I just had one quick question for you, Ken. I want to
Yeah.
know if you could confirm the rumors that the city of Ada is going to change its name to Hada.
I'm not, well, you should know, I've been told that in Russian, the word Ada means hell. So I don't
Hada be a
know.
lot better.
No, that can't happen. It would ruin, because always when I introduce Ken at some event, I always say it's Hada from Ada. And I don't want to lose that quick.
Yeah, it really
He hates
sucks.
it. He hates it though.
No,
That's
no, it's,
another good part.
It's he really should have thought about that before he moved to Asher.
I know. I thought
Asher,
that. a lot.
Hada from Asher. What the hell?
I do not live in Asher. I live 32 miles northwest of Ada, 3 miles west of Asher. Everyone's invited. If you can find me, I'd love to have you. But I work in Ada. I spend a lot of time in Ada, but I live out in the middle of nowhere now.
Where's your post office? What post office?
Oh, I still use the post office box in Ada because I don't have a mailbox where I'm at. So,
Oh.
you know, it's
Where's
cool.
that little town you live closest to though?
Juanette.
Juanette, yes.
Yeah.
I've been to Juanette many times.
Oh,
In
now
fact,
you're just
I used to
bragging.
be married to a man from Juanette, but that's another story I won't go into.
Do we
Do we
have
have
any other?
time? Oh, I'm sorry.
ahead.
Do we have time for a couple questions?
Please.
Or
Yeah.
I was just gonna say that, I got to meet Ken Hada when we brought some students there a few years ago. A couple of times we brought students up there to the Scissor Tail, and then and that's the time, I love the book fair there because, just all of our books are out there, and it's so anyway, I picked up Persimmon's Tree. Is it Persimmon Tree or
Persimmon Sunday.
Persimmon Sunday? That's right. And it was just sort of like reading a daily, like those daily rituals, like the prayer journals. It was just, it's so meditative, and so it was so comforting. And then I've got your Sunlight and Cedar.
Thank you.
And just and I'm having the same experience, just really helping. It's a way to help really meditate and slow down, and it's quite beautiful. And it is like reading a daily spiritual or nightly spiritual. And I absolutely have been so comforted, Ken, by the work. And so I just wanted to say that, and maybe ask you a little bit about I don't know, sort of how long you've been writing, and I don't know, just do you write every day, or is it like a consistent thing, or just when you go out?
Well, thank you for the comments. And I don't know, Alan, I'm kind of in a little bit of a dry spell right now. I haven't written a lot. I got tired of the pandemic. I was writing a lot about the pandemic and through the pandemic, but then I got tired of it, just emotionally tired. And also, I wondered if I was exhausting my place. I'm very much about place. If I travel, when I go to Corpus, I tend to write a poem about the beach. When I go to Canada, and that's sort of my foundational feeling, and it's a lot of it starts there. But no, I don't write every day. I probably ought to, but I had a real stretch there where it just kept coming and coming and coming. And so I'm a better editor now and a better self-critic now, which I think is very, very important. But in terms of the meditative thing that you're referring to, that is a real thing. It's not intended to be, um, in any way proselytory or authoritative for other people, but I do, in my own personal history of failure and loss and just the stuff we all go through in life, I find that sense of trying to reconnect yourself and center yourself, to use a cliche, really important. And so, if you look close at a lot of stuff I've done over the years, there's a lot of upsettedness in there, but there's also there is that sort of corrective. And of course, nature can be vicious. I'm not trying to be sentimental about nature, but I think that's part of the whole deal, is to acknowledge our limitation. And it's kind of paradoxical. So thank you for that. And if it is helpful in that way, I'm grateful. It wasn't an intentional thing, like I'm going to write a spiritual book so that everybody will come to the truth. It's not that at all. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't feel that way at all about it. I love what Zoe Ramos said about your subtly transcendental style.
Yeah, that was a
Yeah.
fascinating comment.
And I want to thank Alan. I didn't thank you properly, and everybody involved, Tom, and whoever put all of this together. I know how much work that is, and I really appreciate you giving me this opportunity to present my work and to hear the work of the other poets today. It's been, it is better than I thought it would be too. It's been a really great morning for me, I know. I'll be glad to come back to Corpus Christi though, when I can come there in person. And I want to go to Ada, and I want to go to Okima, and I want to go to San Antonio, and I want to go to Granbury, and I want to see all those old faces and the new faces and hear the work.
Well, we
Poets are
will
just-
hold you to that coming to Corpus, Dorothy.
Well, I've got my shots, so be careful.
Yep.
How about Albany, Dorothy?
Yes, Albany would be on the itinerary.
Oh,
And there's
great.
Sarah Webb. Sarah Webb, do you still live in Texas?
Yeah,
Sarah.
I'm splitting my time between the hill country on a lake and Corpus, where my daughter lives.
Ah,
Yeah.
you're lucky.
Yes.
Well, all except for Ted Cruz.
Sarah is here and Alex
She's
is
a
here.
spotter for humor, though.
Yeah, right. And Robin, it's good to see you, Robin. Haven't seen your
Oh.
face in a while.
Dorothy, it's so wonderful to see you and to hear your beautiful poetry. And the one for your partner was just absolutely beautiful. Thank you.
I thought
so
you would
much.
like that.
Oh, yes, yes.
And
Yeah.
Sally Rhodes.
Hmm.
Hi, Sally. Miss all of you
Hi,
guys.
Dorothy. Yeah, we miss
And
everybody
Alice,
too.
sweet Alice. I do miss sweet Alice.
Guys, April 8th will be the next Del Mar open mic. It was great that Alex could come the last time and he didn't have to drive all the way down from San Antonio. And it'll be on Teams again. I can't give you the link, but if you email me, and I'll put it in the chat at aberecka@delmar.edu, I will send you the link. I haven't established it, but April's a long ways away. But send me an email. I'll start a list, and when I have a link, I'll mail it back to y'all.
Okay.
Hey, Alan, I wanted to share a quick thought real quick about what Ken said. Because I think all of us with the pandemic, there's this idea if like you identify as a writer and you don't write every day, that some part of you, like you're failing, like some part of your, you're failing at living up to the name. But I heard this writer recently, she's a fairly young writer, Canadian, named Sheila Heti. She's written a couple of short story books. And she said for her, writing feels like, she doesn't write every day. And one day she came to terms with that. And then she said, for her, writing feels kind of like there's a long break and then an explosion. And so it kind of shows in the work. And I thought, you know what, finally someone said how I feel. And now that someone else kind of validated that, I feel that way too. And I think to anyone who, I don't write every day, I beat myself up over it as well. But now I kind of just, I've acquiesced to the thought of writing should feel like an explosion. And then when I do write, it feels more meaningful, less stagnant, almost like motion, like jazz, it goes somewhere. So that was it.
I think you're right on, Alex, and I think we should be reflecting every day or most every day. But I think that for some people it's very important, and I have extended times where I am very disciplined, but that's because there's flow happening. If it's, you use the phrase beating yourself up, and I think we can force a lot of stuff that is not very good, and we're in this rush to get it out. And I think, in my case, at least, I've had to learn to hurry up and slow down at the same time, be intense, but also let it take its course, but yeah, thanks for that. I think the audience would like to know what you're working on next. You doing more Mexican sonnets or what? Where are you going? I really like your stuff. I really like, and I know the audience did. You really have a good feel for, in my opinion, what you're doing. It felt good.
Thank you, Ken. I'm sitting on a third. After the second book came out in July, I told several people, I kind of saw warbles as like my Old Testament. Then there was the New Testament. I was good. I could put poetry to bed. And then November came. And so I have a third collection. I've called Hispanic Sonnets. It's been done. I mean, I wrote it in like a month. So it's the crazy, like kind of what you're saying. I was being called to write, and it was like an explosion. But for over a year now, and I'm getting to the tail end of it, I have a short novel. It's like 30,000 words that I'm calling The Dream Life of Larry Rios, Chicano poet extraordinaire. And for 30,000 words, it's kicking my butt, but I see the finish line now. And each chapter is exactly 101 words. It's kind of out of order, or a little bit in order, and then it's out. But because I think poetry has really helped me, like each chapter feels like I'm only limiting myself to a word, 101 words. So it feels like I have to get to the point, even if I'm veering off on or chewing on some idea. So that's what I have. Yeah.
Deadlines help.
I really appreciate your Alex and Zoe also commenting on like the writing process, and sometimes there won't be long periods where we won't be writing. I find myself, I used to beat myself up a lot because I couldn't write during the semesters are, in some ways brutal because you're just reading all the time. You're reading committee work, stuff is coming in, and you're having to read all those documents and respond to them. And then the student work's coming in, and that it's inspiring and it's quite beautiful, but that requires a lot of listening and a lot of reading. And so, I mean, that amount of work, it can take up to 12 to 15 hours a day. And so I finally have decided, okay, it's okay if I can't get into the deeper spaces of really finding where a poem will take me. So I allow myself, I finally in the last few years of my life have had some time to have the summers off. And I just take them off. I just tighten the belt, and I just, the pocketbook, and because the time is everything and so I try not to beat myself up about not having, because I like that headspace in that room, and time to really explore where a poem can take you. So I try not to beat myself up. There are some writers who are so prolific, regardless of what's going on in their lives, and I guess I'm just not that writer. And I guess, so I still struggle with that, that I'm not as prolific as I'd like to be.
Having an editor helps a lot. I just finished up an article for Oklahoma Humanities, And working with Carla Walker, I know Ken has, and I think she is the best editor in the world. I mean, I haven't tried all of them, of course, but she really keeps me on my toes. She's ruthless. She's cruel sometimes, but my God, my work improves under her. I mean, she just, you know, I want to please her because I know she's really good. I also don't want her chewing my ass so much. So I try really hard, and it seems like the harder I try, the better my work does. Isn't that strange?
Peanut gallery here, but I wanted to ask y'all if you think, I was Chuck Etheridge, by the way, if you think the space is different for poetry and prose. I find I need just a lot more mental room to write poetry. Because I can and do crank on my prose every day. It's the only way I ever get a novel written. But I need space, mental space, time with poetry in a way that I don't need with prose. And I was wondering if that's just me or if y'all have comments on that.
Well, a few years ago, somebody asked me to do a memoir. I don't know why. You know, I spent 40 years trying to learn how to be concise on the page. And then suddenly I had to be expansive. And my brain couldn't take it. I gave up after like a chapter. And I don't think I'm ever going to try it again. But I'm a one-trick pony, Chuck.
Yeah, but it's a cute trick.
It
It's a
is.
real
It's
cute
cute.
trick, Alan.
Cute.
It's a good trick, yeah.
What I go for, Dorothy, I go for cute.
Yeah, I know you do. I can tell. I can tell by looking at you.
I hate to break up the party, but I think we're going to have to shut down so we can take a break here and come back for the contributors of the Switchgrass Review panel. And thank you, everybody, for showing up. What a great panel. What
Thank you,
was
guys.
amazing reading from all three of you, all four of you. And also appreciate it. And you guys have a good day. And please come back and for the next panel. We have about 3 more panels for the day. And it's we'll chug along, and please visit the shop and the bios too, because there's many people's bios as we've got direct links to their books and all. And everybody have a great day.
Thanks,
you.
Tom. Bye,
Thank
everybody.
you. It was really great to hear everyone.
Thank you all so
Thanks for
much.
coming.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
great.
Alex, it was beautiful to hear your work.
Miss and love both
Thank
of
you.
you, Dorothy and Ken and Alex. I can't wait to meet you.
Right.
Bye.
Thanks again.
All right.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.